Good morning, good afternoon to all. First of all, allow me to thank you for the registration and to participate in this cost control global launch and live demonstration of our software. We have participants a bit across the globe. So for some of you, good morning, others, good afternoon. Let's kick off this session. We will have this presentation, the webinar saved and recorded, so you'll be able to assist after if you cannot participate the full time. So let me jump into our presentation for today. And let me start by quickly introducing myself and what I call this road to cost control, my journey in this area of cost and profitability. Management industrial engineer, born and raised in Porto, Portugal. Right after my university degree, I started working for Maersk, the biggest shipping company from Denmark. I lived 3 years in Denmark, 2 years in Rotterdam. And the reason I mention is during this time, I was challenged to support the organization to do a cost to serve project. So they wanted to calculate the cost to serve of a container from A to Z. Sorry, just for a second. Just a second. I'm sorry. Yes, sorry. I was sorry for this interruption. Then during that time, I was exposed in a good way to the methodology time-driven activity-based costing. And we apply this methodology, which is an evolution from activity-based costing from Professor Kalpern from Harvard. And we test, and we were very successful during this phase, during this project. 2009, I was invited by Professor Kalpern to present in a big event on profitability. 2010, I decided to start cost and profitability consulting. So I wanted to do these projects to a lot more organizations, different sizes, small, medium, big. And that's exactly what happened since 2010 until now. So I still do, and I'm very passionate in doing this modeling. I love to go into an organization, collect the data, think about the different methodologies we can apply, implement them in softwares, and then do the reports. During this period of time, I was, of course, traveling the world. One of my favorite projects was actually New Zealand, and my partner in crime for cost control, Sam Galloway, unfortunately could not attend today during the time difference. Is also a founder of Cost Control. We started Cost Control back in 2019. Sorry. So Cost Control started out of this journey, out of this experience. Two guys, one passionate about cost and profitability models. One actually with a company that felt the benefits of applying this methodology to this organization. And as an investor, as a founder of Cost Control, we wanted to start a software that more companies, small and medium enterprises, could have access. So this is a bit the starting point for Cost Control. So what is cost control? For us, it's very clear. It's a cloud-based solution. So it's a software in the cloud using AWS services. And we basically want to turn operational and financial data into multidimensional cost and profitability models. Okay, why? Why is this important? We have seen and we have tested multiple times that business, when they understand their profitability inside out, then they can actually start applying and execution, doing the strategy execution and profit improvement initiatives a lot better. So understanding net profit by customer, by product, by channel seems something very standard, but actually it's not. And it has all to do with the details we provide, with the accuracy of the cost allocation we can deliver in these methods. So why to whom are we are addressing, and why we are trying to help companies using cost control? We identified controllers, the CFOs, the teams who typically try to do this in Excel files, the most the most commonly used for tool for this type of projects. Sometimes they get into this barrier that the volume of the data, the complexity of the models cannot no longer be done in Excel. More the systems parts. A lot of companies, they now have a good ERP, a CRM, WMS, so multiple systems, multiple data sources. And if you want to do a bottom-up approach, doing the cost allocation using your transactional data, you actually need probably to use some kind of software, some kind of solution like cost control. So what we actually try to promote and what we actually deliver is showing company where are they making or losing money. So that's kind of in a nutshell what cost control is. I mentioned a few of the challenges. Let me just go back to that because I reinforce this message that a lot of companies, yes, they have their profitability, but sometimes they are at eye level. So they have their financial reports, which they create to report to their standard reports for the stakeholders, for the state organizations inside, but they are not enough to do this uh, bottom up, low to the lowest level of detailed profitability. Some of companies they manage based on KPIs. Some KPIs they are very high level, gross margin, revenues. So and a lot of companies we see them moving forward on these high level KPIs, but not giving them enough information on again costing and profitability. Uh, in cost control, we believe all companies should be able to have this type of insights. And when we started cost control was to give this capability. So without killing yourself in the exercise, we try to build a software that is actually the workflow, the way it's organized, it's really simplified, so we can get to results in a very fast manner, okay, and with good quality results. So some of the projects I've seen, companies tend to spend thousands of dollars, not only in consulting, but also on the license component of this solution. So that was also one of the things we wanted to avoid with cost control. Uh, Projects taking too much time, too many resources, and then in the end, sometimes the results kind of a black box. If you want to really do a trace back, if you want to explain different type of cost allocations you have done over the period of time, you cannot really do that. Okay, so that's been the challenges we've seen multiple times over the years. So what we are trying to do with cost control, it's actually delivering enterprise power. So what the big companies have at the moment with the SMEs agility. Okay, so you will see during my demo what we are trying to do in cost control. We have a very structured way to organize information from the data source. So collecting data, building that data, uploading the information in cost control, building the models, using this workflow to really use different methodologies. The cost control is ready to apply traditional costing, activity-based costing, time-driven activity-based costing, so the latest methodologies in the market, and they are scalable. So we can quickly start with a pilot, and then we can extend the scope to the size we need. And that is also the advantage of having cost control in the cloud. We can quickly scale and grow any model of any size. In terms of workflow, uh, looking into costs, so the way the model will be built will be collecting information from the financial accounts, the expenses, some drivers, some transactional data, and then we will go into what I think is the core of cost control, the different activities and locations. Okay, so I think this is the secret sauce in cost control. And then in the end, we have some inbuilt reports, but also we allow any organization to export the cube of results to an EBI solution, Power BI, ClickView, Tableau. So that's also already set up. In terms of reporting, we have some reports that allow companies not only to segment the profit, the P&L. A standard P&L usually have the revenue, direct cost, gross margin, indirect cost, net profit. What we allow in cost control, and the reason why we build different models with more or less detail, is allow us to build different margins. And when we isolate a specific combination of a customer and product, for example, we can create that P&L in any dimension. Okay, so and it's fast. Okay, so it's not something, it's not an ad hoc exercise that you do once and you cannot see the impacts. We have dedicated some time also to some visualization reports, which I'll show you during the demonstration. And for me, those are the critical elements to really isolate the problem in the profitability of an organization, and then you can really slice and dice and drill down to try to optimize profitability. Okay. In terms of the process, you'll see it's very well organized. We will have three phases: one for data and drivers, another for activity allocations, the other one for reports. But this more about the process in the demo in a few minutes. In terms of results, just to give you one or two examples, I have what most companies love to see in the end. It's the concept of the whale curve. So this is kind of the graph that explains what we are trying to validate. And this whale curve typically tell us that 20% of the most profitable customers or products could deliver up to 80% of the profitability of this company. Then you have some customers or products that are break even, and then you have 20% that actually bring your profitability down. So all the board members, CEOs, CFOs, when they see this image of the whale curve, they are actually very excited because now they can actually see where they could potentially improve their profitability. And some of them, of course, they tend to think it's just a matter of bringing the negatives to zero. But I'll show you during my demonstration, sometimes even the most profitable customers, they could have, when we combine, when we do this multidimensional profitability, even the most profitable customers can have negative products or services. So sometimes it's really interesting when we get to this report stage, how we can really support companies improve profitability. One of those companies, one of those examples is the Snell. Snell, it's a packaging and distribution company from New Zealand. It's one of our, let's say, reference case studies in cost control. They have, so you understand the complexity of some of these models, they have around 3,000 customers, 25,000 SKUs, products. So basically, they import a lot of these products from, let's say, from Asia, and then they distribute that across different branches in New Zealand. When we started this project, most of profitability was being measured on gross profits, and that was a challenge because a lot of the other costs, logistics costs, customer service, sales, some key departments to the business, they were being allocated after gross margin and based on sales. Okay, and we see this a lot of times. When we went in, of course, we implemented the time-driven activity-based costing methodology. So we have done some process mapping, some activities identification, and we've built a more detailed model for Snell. But more interesting than that is over the period of 13 years, their net profitability kept always growing. And based on these results, right? So every time we run a monthly cycle, we can analyze, isolate some issues, and implement the solutions. And having this detailed information, that's what made a big change in their business. Before you had a contract of, let's say, 1 to 3 years, sometimes when you close the contract, you see the profitability, even sometimes on a gross margin, and some of these customers, they were not profitable, either because freight was free or we offer discounts on some products we shouldn't. Sometimes we were giving pallets. There's so many variables in the business, but we call the profitability levers, that only if we measure them, we can use them in our benefit and actually keep improving. And there's nothing more interesting than in this case that Snell actually engaged with their customers in a kind of a common benefit approach. Okay, so they could demonstrate what was the cost, the process cost from different departments, explain them, could we optimize using A, B, or C method, and actually some of these customers engage and really value the way Snell was measuring profitability. Okay, so that's the some examples, real life examples of implementation of this type of projects. Allow me to go into cost control for a quick live demo. So let me share my screen, see if this works. Entire screen. Share. Okay. Okay. So what is cost control in a live environment? Okay, so what I'll show you now, it's a demo model. I'm calling this demo model time-driven activity-based costing. Any company can build any model, so you can actually go from a blank template, so start from zero. We are currently building a few templates by industry, so we recognize some like manufacturing models, distribution models, transportation models, shared service, healthcare. So we have a lot of cases in different industries, and having a predefined template could accelerate how companies build these models. Okay, so this is something we are working, and it's in our roadmap. Any model can have one or more scenarios. So in this case, I have two scenarios. I have January, February, a simulation on January. So we can quickly build different scenarios. We can quickly duplicate and build simulations on top of these scenarios. And most companies, they build their models initially looking at their historical data. But then the benefit of having cost control, this is on top of their ERP, of their systems, we can quickly simulate changes. So I can quickly simulate a price increase or a price reduction, a salary increase, a salary reduction. So we can quickly isolate the components of our model and do a simulation on using this scenario. So that's the flexibility a lot of the companies they ask us. We have companies at the moment asking us to do simulations on these tariffs. Okay, so it's a hot topic at the moment within the supply chain. I have a company sitting in Portugal. They know the impact of the tariffs of selling to US, but that's only one part of of their problem. The other problem is they have multiple suppliers from Asia. The suppliers are also being affected by the tariffs, and now they are putting their price also up for some of the components and raw materials. So sometimes you are sitting in the middle, you need to run scenarios and see the impact so you can adjust your price and adjust your organization in terms of resources as well. So a few examples on the scenarios. Moving into the workflow. So as I said initially, we have three phases: one for data and drivers, another one for activity and locations, the other one, last one for reports. Going into data and drivers, and very briefly, and not to be too overwhelming, my demo, we start by building the dimensions. Okay, what is this dimensions? What is this all about? It's not nothing more simple than how my transactional data is organized. So typically we ask the invoice, the line item, and so what we are selling, and that basic elements of any business, it's really good to start mapping the key dimensions of the model. Okay, so if I have an invoice, most likely that invoice will go to a customer. It will have a product, and most likely it's coming from a specific branch or where else, like I have in this exercise. So in cost control, we can quickly map and upload the information. So we can download and upload the information directly in cost control. And of course, what we see in our experience is most of these projects we start simple with a pilot, testing the data, and then when the model is stable and we are running on a monthly basis, then we start doing the integration and automatization of data. So one of the things I think that is cool and it simplifies a lot of things is we can quickly upload and download information using CSV and Excel files. So just a quick example of in this demo, we uploaded a product table, the ID, the category, the name, unit of measure, volume, weight, some of the drivers that most likely we'll be using to build our models. Okay, so that's the first step: uploading information on our transactional data, organizing dimensions, uploading data. Okay, second step is on top of this data. In cost control, I can quickly start applying some calculations. Okay, some of them will be quite straightforward and simple. For example, if I need now to calculate my sales, and I have the information of the quantity and unit price and line item information, I can use formulas. Okay, so I can quickly do calculations on top of my original data. So that's something very simple that we can use. Starting thinking about now more about the methodologies and models and the organization. In this example, we have the concept of the cost pools. The cost pool can be a department, a cost center, or an aggregation of specific financial accounts that represent a specific driver. In this case, I'm mapping 5 departments: customer service, sales, warehouse, HR, and IT. I'm defining which ones are direct, indirect. I defined 2 drivers: head counts and square meters, and I also define for the time driven the capacity for each head count. Okay, so in customer service, I have 4 people, and then multiplying 4 by 8,500 minutes per month, I get total number of minutes available. Okay, so this is something we can quickly create. I can add as many drivers as I need, and then I can identify which driver I'm going to use as a time-driven activity-based costing. Okay, so this is the first step. The second step, we identify the key activities for each of the departments. Okay, so here, let me see if I can, just 2 or 3 examples. In customer service, I identify order processing and returns, warehouse storage, transfers. I mapped without going. Sometimes that was one of the issues I did when I was very detailed on the methodology side of things. Sometimes we could spend 3 months, 6 months mapping activities across all the departments. Okay, today, and that was something I learned with experience and with feedback from Professor Kaplan. Sometimes it's easier that you start mapping key activities, and then you'll be refining those activities based on the weight of the costs. Okay, so doing process maps and activities identification across all the organization, it could be a waste of time if we think that maybe some of these activities represent 0.1% of the total cost. Okay, so let's identify key activities by department. That's what we are doing here. And then next step, we are going to upload the financial accounts and the costs. Okay, so in this case, I simplified a lot. What is a common use of the financial accounts? I have an ID, the name, a rent and salary, and then I upload a specific amount for January 2024. So now we are ready to move into the allocations. In cost control, we will have 6 predefined allocations. I will take you through them in a very simple manner. The first allocation is we are going to allocate the financial account to cost pools. Okay, so and this is in this model, I had a lump sum of salaries, I had a lump sum of rent. I defined that I want to allocate the cost of the salaries for the cost pools based on headcounts. And I define I want to allocate the cost of the rent based on the square meters. Okay. In all our allocations, you will have 3 tabs. A management tab, where we basically do that. We define how we want to allocate the costs. We have a calculation tab that basically gets a log, a history of which user did the calculation and when. This is interesting when we have multiple users running the models. And then on the results, and I think this is the key one, we can always validate allocation by allocation the results. So from a source point of view, what was my initial amount? Was it allocated yes or no? So if it was fully allocated, not allocated, and we are doing calculations at 8 decimal places, and if there's a rounding error, that will be highlighted in the status. Okay. Destination, so I can see the total cost of the department. So what is my cost at the customer service after I allocated the rent and the salary? So I can see the amounts, and I can also start seeing the cost per minute. Okay, so I know how many minutes from my capacity I have available. I can also start calculating the cost per minute per department. Okay, I can see the aggregated version, basically the combination of the source and destination. And in all our allocations, we created the Sankey key diagram that allow us to visually validate the cost allocation. And this is one where we are receiving a lot of good feedback, because sometimes in big organizations, the director of a specific department, let's say the director of IT or customer service, he wants to understand the impact of these allocations. Okay, and then it's step by step. You can always have an iteration where the director signs off on the allocation, and we move forward. We have seen multiple times that we get to the results of the net profitability, and then we start having questions about, so show me how much am I receiving from the salary cost of IT. And doing this trace back exercise sometimes is not easy. So we decided to always on each allocation allow the user to validate. The second allocation is for the indirect cost pools. So we identify HR and IT as supporting departments. And in this case, we are allocating based on headcount. So in cost control, we allow for these indirect to indirect and recursive allocations to exist. So we have a method that allow us to go indirect HR to IT, IT to HR, and then eventually to the direct departments. Okay, again, calculation, results, and I'll jump straight into Sankey key so you can understand what's happening. My customer service department, after the first allocation, I had a certain cost, 25,000. And now my customer service department will be those 25,000 plus some cost from HR and some cost from IT. Okay, so now I will have my cost of my directs plus indirects in the result of my second allocation. In my third allocation, I'm going to link the activities to the cost pools. So let's say my customer service, I identify 2 activities and I define a percentage of time of my team to each of these activities. So 85% goes to order processing, 15% to returns. And then the next stage, my fourth allocation, this is where I'm going to start applying activity-based costing or time-driven. Okay, so in this case, I will isolate one example. my order processing activity, I have a formula, basically a time equation, that is saying if it's a return, then 0. So basically the return, it will go into the activities of returns. If it is order processing, it will be 10 minutes per order. This is where in time driven, we can apply the cost per minute and allocate based on the costs on the consumed minutes and the cost per minute. Activity-based costing will use this as a weighted driver, and my total cost will be allocated on the orders on the proportion. Today, it's not the time and moment to give you a lesson on methodology, but this is something that I'm very passionate, and I do workshops and trainings, and I'm a professor on this area. And of course, I'll be more than happy to, in a follow-up of this webinar, to explain a bit more details between the difference between ABC, activity-based costing, and time-driven. But the software itself, cost control, is ready to do both, and I'll show you now this happening. Okay, so in my third allocation, if I go into my Sankey key, I can see the allocation from the cost pool to the activities, order processing and returns. And then in my fourth, I can see in the results the cost going into the different dimensions, customer and line item. Okay, and when I say dimensions, it goes line by line of each dimension. Okay, so for example, my customer calls, I set up a formula or an equation that allocates based on number of calls, goes to a specific customer. So customer one has one call, will receive the proportion of that in ABC, or will receive the cost of the minutes consumed in time-driven activity-based costing. So the software from this point on is good doing both methodologies at the same time, as long as we set up the software or the model to be allocating and calculating in both. My fifth allocation, I'm going to explain that in a very simple manner. So after the cost goes into a specific dimension, if that dimension is what we call a parent dimension, for example, I'm allocating some of these activities for sales at the customer dimension. In my fifth allocation, I can define how I want to allocate that cost down to the line item. First, if I want to allocate, and if I allocate, how should I allocate that? Okay, so it's another opportunity for us to define a formula or the best way to allocate cost down. The software for all the child dimensions automatically will aggregate on the unique IDs, okay, at the customer, product, and warehouse level. The sixth allocation is the same for my calculated drivers. Okay, and that's it. So basically, we have gone through the six allocations, and now the most, I'll say, interesting part of the software, the more visual part of the results. We are going to build the P&L. As I said in the beginning, a lot of companies, they have already a P&L. Here, what we are going to do, we are going to drill down and provide a lot more details on the costs. So as yes, I have a revenue based on sales, quantity by unit price. Yes, I most likely will have direct cost being quantity by unit cost, so nothing fancy here. That generates a gross profit. But then when we look at the indirect costs, now I can drill down on the different departments, customer service, and activities. Okay, and those activities are being allocated based on this process we just explained on the allocations. So it's really detailed and it's multidimensional. What do I mean by that? These multidimensional reports. So if we now start looking into our reports, the first report we typically do is a validation of the numbers. Here I can select between activity-based costing and time-driven. I'll start with the activity-based costing one. And I can see this to start with on a global level. So I want to understand in January 2024, what is my result? What is my revenues? And I can validate the numbers across all the items, okay? And I can see my net profitability in January was negative, minus 1,794. Okay, so that's the first report. I can validate the report having the dimensions side by side. Okay, so now I can see still the structure of the P&L, the initial amount, and then how the cost was allocated across the different dimensions: customer, line item, product, and warehouse. And this is specifically important when we define those rules that the cost goes to customer but shouldn't go to the line item. A very simple example: if I'm doing a marketing campaign for a specific product category or a specific product, maybe that cost should go only to that product and not be allocated to the invoices of this month. Maybe the campaign I did over 6 months, I pay that expense on month 6. It's not correct to allow the cost to be allocated based on only the products bought in month 6. Okay, so some of these questions. They are very common in when we start building the models. Going more into a visualization mode. So here I'm going to start by showing you the whale curve, which I mentioned initially in my presentation. For this case, I'm showing you the whale curve based for the customer dimension and based on net profit. Let me just change this for a second. What most companies are seeing is this type of curve. On a gross margin, on a gross profit level, the blue bars, it's the gross margin of each customer. And of course, most likely I know how to sell. I'm selling on a profit. All customers, they contribute to profitability. So the green line, the blue bar, it's each individual customer. The green, it's the cumulative gross profit. Now, the advantage of having time driven and building this type of methodology, now I can look at net profits without first questioning the results, okay? Because I've done the model, I validate stage by stage of my allocation. So when I look to these numbers, now I can see this, which is really interesting, because yes, I have some good customers, profitable customers. In a perfect world, my profitability for January should be 18,000, so a year on top. But then I have a lot of loss giving customers. Okay, so that's why, and my net profitability, it's minus 1,700. Okay, so that this is the end of my green line, the cumulative net profit. Okay, so now your question could be, so explain me how and what should I do now. Okay, so one of the things we like to build after, it's the tree map. So we start again on the tree map. I'm going to select my customer dimension, total revenue, net profit, top 50. So the size of the square is the sales. So the bigger the size, the bigger in terms of sales. And then of course the color, more green, less green, that will represent net profitability. So yes, it's the whale curve, but in a different format. Why I'm showing you this one? I'm showing you this one because the next one is the most interesting one, because now I'm going to combine the dimensions, customer and product dimension. And this is where things really start to get interesting, because even my most profitable customer, C93, have some products that are loss giving. Okay, and of course, even my worst customers, they still have some products that are profitable. So jumping to a conclusion that we should just remove our loss-giving customers could be a big mistake, and that's what companies don't want to do. Okay, and that's, I think, at the end of at this stage, it's where some companies, they like to have some advisory services or someone to help us to help them uh, defining the profitability initiatives over a certain period of time. I will not kill you with a lot more examples. I think this is what I want to show you. There's a lot more. I can promise you that. I just want to probably show you this last image where, of course, we can export the cube. This is a multidimensional cube with all these details of this profitability calculation. We can export it to any solution. We are now working on trying to embed the Power BI reports in cost control. And also in the roadmap, so I'm showing you a version 1.27. In the roadmap of cost control, we are looking a lot into AI. I know AI, it's kind of the buzzword. We are doing some tests where we can have some prompts. At least there's a lot of things we can do in the AI world inside cost control. At the moment, we are testing in the reports. Okay, so in the reports, imagine I'm a management controller of this company. I would say, show me a report with my top 10, bottom 10, identify 2 or 3 initiatives, or where should I start by optimizing my profitability, look into multidimensional of customer and product. What I'm showing you, it's very human and manual. And sometimes also depending on the experience of the controller or the consultant supporting that controller. I think AI can really accelerate these profit improvements initiatives. Okay, so that's what I want to show you in terms of demo. The next slide, and I'm almost getting to a conclusion on this webinar, and then I want to have a look to some of your questions. the software, we spend a bit of time to have our page ready. Now we are very happy and very proud of our landing page of Cost Control, and I think if you need a bit more information, you'll be able to find that here. Okay, so there will be a home page, some information about the software. We are very proud to keep expanding our global partners. So basically, we see a lot of boutique consulting companies across the globe. They can really support organizations to accelerate and build these models. Of course, we want cost control to be used by any company, any controller should be able to build their own models without support. But we also recognize sometimes we can accelerate some of this model building using cost control. In terms of pricing, just some high-level ideas. We are offering a 1 month free trial to all the participants of this webinar, and we are really excited if some of you actually could invest some of your time to test with us cost control. Okay, so we are launching. We want to have more case studies. We want to have customers really happy with cost control, and that, I think that's what will make us really happy about that. Just last detail on pricing. This is a cloud-based solution. Yes, we should have a return on the investment, but that's not the key thing. The key thing sometimes is the volume of the data. It's the complexity of the model. Okay, so of course, yes, we are using some services. We will be paying for those services. That's part of our cost and profitability model at Cost Control. So the price sometimes depends on the complexity of the model, and that's why we need to know a bit more about your model before presenting you a price. And that's it. And then we have, of course, all the contacts ready to go. Let me jump back into my presentation. See if I can do that. Stop sharing. Stop sharing. Stop sharing. And now I show you the website. Yeah, and that's yeah. I'm getting to my finishing line on my presentation. So what's next? Uh, yes, that 1 month free trial. In terms of next steps, what we are open, of course, to receive some of your contacts. You can use the email. You can use also our direct contacts emails for both myself and Sam Galloway. And of course, I would like to thank you all for your time today. And now let me just have a quick look into the chat before closing the webinar. Are you using AI agents for cost and profitability? I think I addressed that. That is actually in the roadmap, as I explained, and this is something we really want to invest this year, until the end of this year. Thank you so much for your feedback here. It has insights regarding this possibility. Yeah, and that question on the tariffs, I reply, and this is something, actually, there will be an article coming out soon from us with a quick demonstration how the tariffs, how cost control could help with this recalculation of tariffs for a lot of the companies that are in need at the moment to quickly calculate and recalculate that. And that's it. I think I've seen all the questions. So allow me to thank you, all the participants. I can see we had around 23 people attending and enjoying this with me. Thank you so much for your time today. As I said, following to this webinar, we will share a link, and we are really looking forward to receive some of your contacts and build some cost and profitability models with you in cost control. Thank you so much. Have a good rest of the day. Cheers.